Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everybody Matters, our family and friends edition. I'm Jill Catherine, the host of the call, and I'm happy to be here. This is our time that we get together once a month to have this conversation of healing and support for you all who may know someone who is struggling, a loved one with an eating disorder or disordered eating or body dissatisfaction. And so this is our time that we're happy to be here and provide support for you, answer questions that you may have. So welcome. If you feel comfortable when you join, to please let us know that you're here. That would be great. Anytime that you join the call, you can just let us know. How the video chat works is this is a live stream, and so I'm the only one who's being seen. So if you want to chat with us on the sidebar function, that would be great. Given that this is a live feed, sometimes there's about a 30-second delay or so from when I speak to when you hear, so I just want to make you aware of that. And yeah, so basically how our chats will run is I'll start with a topic, a theme, to get us thinking and understanding in a more broad way the different challenges and complexities that are factor into eating disorders and disordered eating and body dissatisfaction. And then once, we get into that topic, I'd love to know if there's anything I can help you with, if there's some particular questions that you have. Every single one of you who has a family member or loved one struggling with this disease is going to have your own specific challenges that are particular to your family member, to your loved one. And so it's our purpose of this chat is to help support you more broadly and also with the challenges that you're dealing with as opposed to the specific details that you might need, and also just to help you and get you to get support and to help answer questions you have about your own relationship to your loved one and what you might be able to do to help them. So this is March, and March is Women's History Month. And, eating disorders affect all genders, all ages. They don't discriminate from race or ethnicity or genders. So I want to make that really clear, that people from all backgrounds, socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, and sizes, people of all different sizes are struggling with eating disorders. It's not something that you can always see. And the degree of a person's illness and sickness of the disease is not measured based on their weight. It's not something one can see. We cannot see what's happening in the inner landscape of the body and of the mind. And eating disorders are very tricky like that. We have a tendency to believe that a person in crisis is a very thin person. And although that could be very true, that's not the only body that could be in crisis. I'd like to spend a little time in terms of a topic this session to just focus a little bit on the women's role, given it's Women's History Month, and the role that media has played in the way that women think about their bodies and relate to their bodies. Now, something we've discussed before is how eating disorders are a complex mental illness, both genetic and sociological. And so it's not one specific cause of it. It's not just society causes it. It's not just genetic factors. There's a whole host of intersections between those two areas that play a significant role in the onset of this disease. With that being said, I do want to just give a little attention to what we experience in our culture historically through through how media influences how we think about our bodies. So, you know, there's one resource I would suggest. There's a great documentary called Misrepresentation, and it's a great educational documentary that gives more of a look at to historically over, let's say, the last 70 or 80 years, how beauty standards for women have changed and based on the generation. And so what is deemed as beautiful today was not deemed as beautiful years ago. And so I bring that up because you know, this influence of beauty standards certainly plays a tremendous impact on the psychological and interpersonal relationship one has with their body, particularly women. I mean, we have so much emphasis on external beauty today that we have data and sources explaining the symmetry of a face and what makes a face more beautiful than another face based on the symmetry, and what makes a body more beautiful than another based on, or skin, and a variety of factors. And this is real stuff that we're dealing with in our current culture. And if we, you know, take a look at the amount of images, we see thousands of images a day, and different sources give different numbers. So I'm just fair to say all of us will exceed thousands of images a day just by walking and being alive in the world. And how impressionable those images are on our brains has a tremendous impact. And if you look at brain development, you know, until we get to about that college age, that 18 to 23 years, that age there is where really that frontal lobe, our brain has developed enough where we can start to think critically. You know, that's why those years are beautiful opportunities for college students to start thinking critically, because our brains have developed enough. But as a younger person, your brain isn't developed, and these impressions of these images that we're told about our bodies plays a significant role. And, you know, only 5% of the population naturally has a body that's going to fit those beauty standards of society. Just 5% of the human population naturally is going to fit those beauty standards. And so what's that saying is that 95% of us are being fed with images of what a body should look like, particularly as a woman, for example, in this, you know, theme. And 95% of us, our bodies aren't designed to look that way. That's a real challenging relationship to have in the world, and being in a body that doesn't look a way naturally at all. And so what that succumbs to is many young women feeling pressured to diet and restrict and to starve and to over-exercise and to shape and sculpt and try to control their body to meet a certain beauty standard to then feel good about themselves. And, you know, if we look at what happens with media in general, I mean, there's tremendous literature out there. Killing Us Softly is another video that talks about the media manipulation, the photoshopping, the airbrushing that happens within all these images. Now, this has been talked about for over a decade now, and yet it's not really reducing our onset of eating disorders. You know, education has been happening in schools and some environments around media literacy, around these images, trying to teach young people, you know, what you're seeing. Let's start to look at this a little bit critically even now, because it's not, these aren't real images. So this work around media literacy has been happening, and we're still not seeing a curbing yet of the onset of eating disorders. And so what we want to continue to add to this conversation is how how we can start to shift the culture and conversation from how women look in their bodies to what we accomplish in our bodies. I mean, it's very common in any news source, whether you're looking online, you're picking up a newspaper, a magazine, as a woman, if it's almost more likely there's a reference to our body or external beauties as opposed to the work that we're doing in the world and having a body. And so what we're needing to do from a prevention effort is to encourage and support conversations with women of all ages to start to change how we see our bodies as this object that has to look a certain way to it being our instrument that allows us to be of purpose and service. And the reason why, we're talking about this theme today in our support group chat is because if you're here and you're listening to this, and I know, Paul, you're here, that obviously a loved one is struggling with this, somebody that you know. And having, when we have a loved one who struggles with this, it's a crisis, and we want to, it's this, we want to deal with the crisis. We want to do what we can. It's sort of this tunnel vision of things that practical steps we need to do, A, B, and C, which are really essential. And so in the purpose of our chats, we just try to give some time and education to you all that's more of that 360 view, that 10,000 foot view of the crisis, and say, there is so much happening in our cultural component that is playing a role and affecting your loved one in these bigger and broader ways. And so, yes, we need to deal with the immediate crisis and help to support our loved one. But over the long term, we also need to expand our view and have a deeper understanding of how the onset of these disease, comes about. And historically, the challenges that we, all people, face in their bodies, and women, particularly as women who are constantly being objectified, that weight equals their worth, that their beauty is measured by, fitting into these standards and categories. And the reason why we do these little educational components is, if you're supporting your loved one, it's very common for most in our culture it's become so normal to think that weight equals the worth, that beauty is fitting these beauty standards. That's become sort of a normal way for all of us to think. And if we really want to support our loved one, we have to start to do our own rethinking and start to take a step back and understand all these influences and how they affect our thinking, which is then going to affect the way that we support our loved one. So there is a purpose to this, why as a loved one of a family member, or family member who has someone who's struggling, or a friend, that it's just as important for you to get education about this and think critically about it, and start to think critically in your own component of how you define beauty and success, and how you see health. That health can come in all different shapes and sizes. Health is not about looking a certain way. So just giving that little background. So I'd love to open this up to Paul and touch base with you and ask you what has brought you to this call today. And find out what is it that you're needing support with. And will do my best to help provide you with support in any way that I can. So just checking in and seeing if, well, Paul's response is here. So Paul says, my wife and I are on. Our son was actually just diagnosed with anorexia. Oh. Well, first off, I'm so sorry to hear that, Paul. That's a really scary and challenging diagnosis to have. And like I said earlier, as we started this, eating disorders don't discriminate. Paul says we are kind of going through the stages of grief, denial, sadness, anger, etc. Yeah. These are natural stages to have. We don't know how to support him, what to say, what not to say. So this is what many of us struggle with, right? First and foremost, I want to really affirm, Paul, to you and your wife, that recognizing the stages that you're going through is so critical, and it's so natural for family members to go through these stages of, grief, denial, sadness, anger, fear, all of that. And what I first want to just take some time before we go into your next question of how to support and what to say, what not to say. I just really want to encourage you and your wife to explore what is coming up for you in these stages, because the way how you can support your son is by taking a look at it's not just your son that's going to be going through this now. You guys are going through this now. And so together, between you two, separate of your son, as all these stages you're going through, if you can give yourself some time to explore what are you sad about? What are you scared of? What are you in denial of? What are you afraid of? Together, starting to explore with yourselves what's there for you in these stages is going to help get you both into a deeper place, into a thoughtful place, into an honest, authentic place, so you can start to get clear for yourselves what this is bringing up for you as you're then supporting your son through this process. What happens with a lot of families is your loved one is suffering, and this is a very difficult disease, and so all the attention goes there, which is natural, which is important. You want to get the help you need. What we just have seen over and over is that all your attention is going to go there, but there needs to be some attention given to what is all coming up for you guys with this, because an eating disorder, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just an isolated thing. It's not just within your son. There is all these components around his life that played a role. So there's going to be some genetic things. There's going to be some social, societal influences, right? And then there's going to be different triggers. There's normally different triggers that happen when this disease really takes hold. Okay, so whatever that catalyst was, there might be one or more than one, but there are significant impact points when how this disease starts to take hold. And it might start to take hold with just going on a diet, or it might start to take hold with just, a difficult emotional time. But there's even the going on a diet, it's all factored around some sort of catalyst that happened. And so as his parents, you're part of that whole big equation for him. You're part of that genetic component. You're part of the social component, whatever's happening in your family structure, whatever happens in your family around success and health and beauty and body and performance and perfection and emotion and how you're processing emotion in your families. These are all parts of the whole equation. They're not a blaming. It's not it's not looking at any one of those things I said and blaming you as part of the equation. It's just needing to take a look at it, that you're part of it all, and trying to understand, you know, what were those catalysts, what were the trigger moments that you think happened for your son that has brought him to this point. For families, this is, I'm going to be straight, it's not an easy journey, but it can be an incredible journey if you can be on it with him. And what I mean by that is not separate yourself from this journey, because you're part of it. You're part of the family, and there are going to be family dynamics and part of your own personal dynamics that may have influence and play a role in just the way he was shaped, and as well as his own intrinsic traits. So I think what becomes difficult for families is they feel blamed, and it's what they did and what they said. And if you can always remember, the goal is not to blame, is just to understand and see the bigger picture. Then what can happen in this is that as your son starts to get the healing and the treatment he needs, and that you all get the healing and treatment you need, collectively, you all can move through this together. And it's not going to be perfect, and there's going to be starts and stops and ups and downs. But what helps this journey and this healing to move less painfully and more productively is everyone being willing to, in particular as parents, to put your guard down and say, let's take a look at all of our stuff. Let's take a look at our family dynamics. Let's take a look at, you know, maybe triggers in the past or seeds that were planted, or how did we get where we are today? Let's all take a look at that, not as a way to blame or make people feel shame, but so we can all see that there's a bigger picture here. So I say that to you not lightly, thinking that that's a very easy thing to do. I understand the difficulty in that, and recovered from an eating disorder myself and had my parents involved, and there was parts that were very difficult for them to be involved with. But as soon as their guards came down, and as soon as we all could say, how can we help each other, that's when we really could start making movement forward. So we don't know how to support him, what to say and what not to say. You know, we have, just for reference, and I'll answer your question though, we do have there's some videos here that are Eating Disorder 101 on this YouTube channel, if you want to check that out, that literally are Eating Disorder 101, I believe it's called. And that goes through some of the basics around eating disorders. But, you know, this whole thing of what to say and what not to say. I think if there's one critical thing you can know what to say, is to focus on how is he doing? How is he feeling? What is going on within? What is happening on an interpersonal level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on an intellectual level? What most people want to do is focus on the physical. And it's important to focus on the physical, particularly because the physical has to be healthy or we're in danger, right? So, but the fact that you're on this chat right now tells me that you're connected with the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service, hopefully. And so therefore it sounds as if he's getting clinical care, he's getting some treatment. And getting your son set up with a treatment team, so he's seeing a nutritionist, hopefully through the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service, because they've really are groundbreakers in treating people from a nutritional standpoint with eating disorders. There's no one else like them in the country that is doing as good of a job. And then you also have a therapist that he's seeing, a medical doctor that he's seeing. So we call that a treatment team. So your job as parents to work on the physical part is to make sure he has a treatment team. And then that treatment team is who is going to work with him about how on that physical component. So then your job doesn't become the food police. Then you're not every second having to manage and ask him what he ate and manage that food component. That's what his clinical team is really designed to do. Now, you can have a role in that, and what I would encourage is you to talk to his treatment team on what they suggest your role could be with that food component. You know, I don't know your situation. Are you living together? How old is he? And all that kind of stuff. So you can find those details out, though, by talking to his clinical team and asking, hey, what do you see as his parents? What role should we play in the food part? But what we encourage is that you don't become that food police. That's what his relationship with his clinical team is about. But ask and see what their suggestions are. Your role then becomes being his parents, finding out, you know, what's going on, what was the trigger? Did something happen recently? Was there a trigger that this got all started? What's the fear about? What's the perfection about? What's the numbing about? What is the wanting to, you know, anorexia is this fear of life, you know, denial of the self. What is it that Paul says, oh, we can see several potential catalysts in this equation. So I appreciate that point. This is so complex. Very grateful for the clinic and resources like this. Good. Okay, it is so complex. And I'm glad you can see several potential catalysts because, right, there's a whole picture here and it is complex. But, okay, here's the thing. Anything that's complex is because there is great capacity to, once things are lined up, to be able to be accomplished. So the complexity of this disease matches the complexity of your son. So I would imagine he's a fascinating, highly talented human being in many ways that are unique to him. And at the root, I mean, so this is sort of, you know, the deep psychological work that he's going to need to do on his own. As parents, you can play a really helpful and supportive and healing role in that. By being willing to have conversation about it. So, and being willing to talk about your own vulnerabilities, your own complexities, your own challenges, your own fears. We never dismiss the impact and the importance you both taking the walls down, talking about your own issues, talking about your own struggles as a young person, talking about the catalysts that you believe you've seen that have impacted him, and talking about your emotional response to that and how you can understand some of maybe the challenges and fears he's having. By you being able to be raw and real about your own self and your own life and your own challenges, that is what your son, can be tremendously helpful. Because when those of us who struggle with the complexity of this disease is because we ourselves do not understand our own complexity. We don't have any guidance. We don't have role models. We have, we struggle with people, being real with us and talking about shame and fear and worry and insecurity and not being successful and not being good enough and not meeting expectations. That's all that inner stuff that is going on some level within your son. And he's on an island by himself trying to deal with this. And that's where the eating disorder comes in. It comes in and takes all that away and numbs it. And so then he can just use the eating disorder instead. So what we want to do is say, no, you don't have to be alone in this. We want to know what's going on for you. We want to be there for you and just listen sometimes and share your own life stages, your own struggles, your own vulnerability. So when we say what to say and what not to say, what we want to say is we want to be real. We want to check in. We want to say, how are you? We want to say, we want to ask questions about what you're afraid of. What do you love? We want to go into that emotional conversation place, which is not always the easiest place to go. What we want to stay away from is focusing on his body. We want to stay away from, focusing on the weight, making comments about that. Well, what we want to stay away from is saying you look good, you look bad. We want to take the emphasis off the physical part. But the way you're emphasizing the physical part is by making sure the treatment component is set up. That's how you're speaking about that. You're making sure that clinical is there, but you don't need to be verbally commenting on his body. And if you have family and friends who are commenting on his body, you can, when he is not around, you can ask them not to do that. You want to be focusing on the inside of him, not the outside of him. So, other thoughts? What else is there for you right now in this moment is coming up for you? So just this, Paul, he just said, excellent information. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. I guess what I started to say a little bit earlier too is there's two ways we can go about this, right? And that is, Paul says, I don't know if we have any other questions at this moment. We're rather early in our journey. Great. So Paul, what I'm just going to leave you and your wife with is this. There's two ways you all and your family can go about this. You can see this as this is something our son struggle with. We're going to get him what he needs, and then we stand over here. We love him, but we're going to stand over here. Or you can say, my son struggles with this. We're going to walk this walk with him. We're going to let our guards come down. We're going to realize that we're not perfect too. No parents are perfect. We're products of this world just like everyone else. We're all learning how to manage to be emotionally intelligent. We're all learning how to, have clear thinking and in a world and a society that has a lot of impressions. So if you can walk this path with him from the start, that you're willing to let the guard come down, try not to take things personal, keep asking questions, keep seeking resources, and most importantly, that you and your wife take can do your own self-care, because this is a journey, and there's no doubt in my mind, if you walk into it with your son with an open heart, with an open mind, with your guard down, and a willingness to have real vulnerable conversations with him, your family and him can get closer and stronger, and he actually can get at the root of some very penetrating parts of himself that could either make him be spectacular in the world, right? If he can learn how to harness it and figure out how to process who he is and his talents between his inner world and his outer world, if he can start to figure that all out with your support, he'll be magnificent in the end, because those of us who struggle with this disease are highly sensitive, highly intuitive, have tremendous capacity to do things and influence others with our sensitivities, with our intelligence. And it's really, really learning how to navigate our own inner landscape. When we're able to do that with the support of our family, with professionals, we can start to learn how to process our emotions and use our mind and our talents for great good in the world. And because to heal from an eating disorder, you have to, I'm going to speak in the body of your son and the mind of your son. He's going to have to figure this out, because we have to eat food, right? So if, alcohol is the way that you manage your emotions, we can choose not to drink when our emotions, are out of whack. When we're with food, you have to eat to live, right? So this disease requires a tremendous intelligence of our emotions that we start to have to learn to manage, that a lot of the population doesn't ever have to even figure out, because they sort of live, they live in different ways to manage those feelings. But this disease forces one to really go into those spaces. So you support him, you stay open to him, the guard is down, you be vulnerable, you grow with him, you learn yourself, you learn the ways that you have your own perfectionism, you have your own stuff going on as a place of growth for yourselves. This can really bring your family together and in tremendous ways. So that you're early on, that you're seeking out this is really good news. And so I want to give you hope that by you approaching it in this capacity, it will improve, and it will decrease the suffering in some capacity, and it's going to move you along in a less painful way. But so important is for you and your wife, because this journey is not all roses. There's highs and lows, there's starts and stops. So self-care for you and your wife is critical, because it's gonna be painful. You can't control it. It's so frustrating at times. It's really difficult. And so getting your own support, seeing a therapist yourselves, and whatever that means for you. I mean, it could be checking in a couple times a month. It could be checking in every few months, but just getting your own support is critical, because what you don't want to happen is that you're taking it out on each other. And you don't want this to be putting a wedge between you two, because one of you might respond to what he's doing and the other is going to respond a different way. You're going to have different approaches. So there's so many dynamics. So take care of you guys. Keep the love at the core. Get the support you need. Take the self-care that you need, right? Find some boundaries that you're going to need to set in your family. And a therapist and a good clinician can help you with that. So those are just some solid foundational things to consider as you're on this journey. And there's no doubt in my heart and in my mind that if you just allow those pillars to be in your life and approach it that way, you'll find your road in this, and you'll get to where you need to get for all of you, and you'll come out of it, God willing. Or I don't mean to use that word, but however, whatever power there be. So I wish you luck. We'll be here next month, the second Wednesday of next month. If you want to, tune in then and check back in, okay? I wish you the best of luck. Be well.